There were times I remember going out to dinner and the waiter would pour Brett's glass and my glass, and I would like analyze them to see like who's got more. And I would switch glasses with him. And I woke up in the morning and I couldn't remember how many glasses of champagne I had. I could not remember. When we would go out with other people, I was actively watching how much everyone else was drinking so that I could make sure that I wasn't drinking faster than anyone else, even though I wanted to. Even though I wanted everybody else at the table to drink their drink faster, I would actively watch everyone because I guess I was worried how people were looking at my drinking habits. Hey, my name's Chalene Johnson, and I started drinking 43 years ago, and then I decided to take some time off. And it's a story. I'm going to start by telling you that this video is going to be done in 4 parts. The first part, I'm just going to start with like how I got into drinking, the history of my drinking, and how it progressed. In the second part, I am going to point out some of the signs that I should have been aware of that things were progressing and not in a good way. And I think these are really important, especially if you're someone who you don't consider yourself a heavy drinker. You're like a social drinker or a moderate drinker. I think you should be aware of these signs too. And then in the third part, I'm going to tell you what taking 30 days off was like literally what it was like, where I struggled. And then in the fourth part of this video, I'm going to share with you everything I learned in 30 days. It was quite surprising, really surprising. And ultimately, I'll tell you where I'm at today. At age 13 or 14, my parents had a party, and I remember a bunch of kids being there and us sneaking downstairs and stealing a 6-pack of beer. We snuck it up into my bedroom. We sat around in a circle, cracked open a beer, passed it around the circle, and I remember that feeling. I remember thinking like, this is awesome. And from that point on, like 13, 14, 15, like any opportunity to get together with kids and steal parents' alcohol or have someone's older sibling buy for us, that's just what we did. I drank in middle school. I drank in high school, like not too much, obviously, way too much, but anytime we could get our hands on it. So if it was on the weekends, it was like the thing to do. It was fun to party on the weekends. And I never thought about it being a problem. I went off to college and like most people, most kids, I mean, that's when my partying like really took off. In fact, I met my husband at the bar, and from there, just drinking became something we regularly did together. I kind of think like most people, I never had blackouts. I never had horrible, I mean, I think we all have had those moments where you've, maybe not everyone. I have had those moments where it wasn't pretty. And so then you're like, oh, okay. So I'm not going to drink that much again. So I always kind of knew my limits. Then we had kids and my husband and I, and our drinking then became something that we really only did when we would have a date night. And I remember feeling like, oh, like I deserve this. I'm a stressed out mom. And like now the two of us are at this lovely place, this restaurant with white linens. And this is what we do. This is our adult moment. And we would, get margaritas and never too many drinks because back then there wasn't Uber. So I think like the max we would ever have is 2 drinks. And my husband's, a much bigger guy. So that was like no big deal for him. And it was really no big deal for me either. But I do remember getting hangovers. I remember thinking like, okay, I can't drink this much again because I don't feel good the next day. And that feeling of being hungover prevented me from ever really kind of drinking more than that. When our kids got older, we had a few more date nights, but like I really think a big limiter to the amount of alcohol that we drank, because we never really drank at home, was the fact that we had kids and there was no Uber. But like as our kids started to get older and they were in high school and then Uber was invented, then suddenly it became a little bit easier to have more than one drink. It was made it a lot easier for us to go out. Now, we also had more money. So now we were able to have date night like twice a week. So slowly, the amount of times, the frequency of my drinking increased. Somewhere in that time frame, I experienced some health issues. I decided to stop teaching my fitness classes. I took a step back from the fitness industry per se, and I really started digging into health, like internal health, looking at my brain health, looking at all of the metrics that make us, live longer. And in doing so, I realized or I discovered that alcohol was loaded with toxins. By the way, my name is Chalene Johnson. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Chalene Show. I have a podcast you can listen to on an audio as well. If you're here watching on YouTube, I just want to invite you to subscribe. The coolest people on the planet are those people who tell me in the comments, like, hey, today when you reminded me to subscribe, I realized I hadn't been subscribed and I want to hear the update. I want to find out, like, do you stick to this? So make sure you subscribe and then comment below this video and let me know that today is a day you subscribed, and maybe tell me a little bit about your own journey. Somewhere in that time frame, I discovered that specifically in the United States, imported wines and champagnes had far fewer toxins than the stuff you could get in the United States. And I'm like, well, I want to be healthier. And, we're hearing all this news that one glass of wine a day or one drink a day is considered fine, or some people would even say healthy if you're drinking red wine. And so I remember thinking, like, I don't really like red wine. I really like margaritas, but I don't want to drink toxins. So I started looking for healthier alternatives. And I remember listening to a health podcast. I'm not going to name the person, but they're like very well known. And they were interviewing someone at a company that imported wines and champagnes from all over Europe. And I learned so much about what was in the ingredients of our domestic wines and alcohols, and that they don't even have to label them. Like, they can put straight up poison in the bottles here in the United States, and they don't have to tell you anything on the label other than the alcohol content. So I'm like, okay, let's make this healthier decision. Let's switch to these imported wines and champagnes. So we did that. And I'm not like at all blaming anyone. It's, where I ended up is because of my own decisions. But I'm just like, I want other people to be aware that it can be a slippery slope, because here's what happened. I no longer had hangovers. I no longer felt like crap in the morning after 2 glasses of wine or 2 glasses of champagne. And that made it easier. Like, that deterrent, the feeling bad, wasn't there anymore. So then COVID hits and our kids move back home. Everyone starts drinking more. No one's going to restaurants. So we're like cooking at home together, and we're all enjoying this like imported champagnes and wines. And that was kind of the first time I remember like having more than a couple of drinks at home. COVID's over. Now we've kind of got this habit, and I've got this belief in my mind, like, this is healthier, and really like starting to lie to myself. I'm also looking for proof. This is cognitive dissonance at its finest. Like, I'm looking for proof. I'm looking for other people who've got nice physiques or they're health influencers. And I'm like, they drink wines and champagnes. And so, like, therefore, I know I can do this too. Then we went to Europe in 2023. And I remember we drank almost every day. I mean, we went out to dinner almost every night, which meant you have them bringing a beautiful bottle of wine or champagne to the table. And I remember thinking, like, okay, this is too much and we need to cut back. And we did when we got home, significantly. But we were still drinking more often than we ever had before. And some things now looking back, and I noticed, like, I was noticing that, and I would joke about it, I would say, like, this champagne is defective. I don't even taste any alcohol. I don't feel any buzz. Not realizing that what was happening is my tolerance was going up. And I noticed I was the person always suggesting that we get champagne, or always suggesting that we drink. And looking back on the last 30 days, I realized I was always that person. And I was almost testing Brett to see if he was going to be the one to suggest it, or if it was going to be me. But I was also actively making excuses in my head. Like, I remember thinking to myself, wow, we're drinking like multiple times per week. And I'm having at least 2 glasses of champagne, which was probably more than that, because when we're pouring it at home, it's a fuller glass. But we were splitting a bottle of champagne. But then I noticed that I was making excuses for myself, like, but yeah, other people have drinking problems because they're hungover and they don't feel good. And I was actively building muscle. In fact, I had lost considerable body fat that year. And so I'm like, this can't be bad, right? And again, I was looking for, associates and friends who are health influencers and really well respected in the world. And they were drinking wine and champagne on a regular basis. And we would have these conversations together about, like, how crazy it was that everybody was like suddenly giving up alcohol. How annoying. I would literally think to myself, like, this is so annoying that people are jumping on this trend. Don't they? Look at us. We're great. And I would do the checklist. I'm not blacking out. I haven't hit a rock bottom. I don't drink and drive. I never drink during the day. I don't crave it. I don't hide it. I'm not thinking about it throughout the day. I don't have a problem. Like this is what you consider social drinking. But I've made a list of some of the things I've had to be honest with myself. And I now realize were telltale signs that things weren't headed in the right direction. I would actively watch how much the waiter was pouring Brett or anyone else at the table. I mean, there were times I remember going out to dinner and the waiter would pour Brett's glass and my glass, and I would like analyze them to see like who's got more. And I would switch glasses with him. Now, most of the time we were having drinks when we would go out for date night. But I remember showing up at a restaurant, or if we did go to a restaurant that didn't serve alcohol, feeling really annoyed, like almost feeling anger welling up inside of me. I also started getting in this habit of expecting or asking for a pregame before we would go out to dinner. So like while I'm getting ready, while I'm putting on my makeup, I would ask Brett, hey, could you get me a pregame? Like, not can you get me a cocktail before we go out to dinner? I would call it something cute and fun, like a pregame. When we would go out with other people, I was actively watching how much everyone else was drinking so that I could make sure that I wasn't drinking faster than anyone else, even though I wanted to. Even though I wanted everybody else at the table to drink their drink faster, I would actively watch everyone because I guess I was worried how people were looking at my drinking habits. Another thing I started doing is if we were out to dinner with like a group of people and the dinner took like a really long time, like 4 hours, I would never order like a second bottle of champagne for Brett and I. But I would remember thinking to myself, like, this has been too long and I need more of a buzz. So when we would go home, even though I'd had a pregame before we went to the restaurant, and then I, had 2 glasses at dinner with Brett, because it was over so many hours, I'd be like, oh, well, my buzz is worn off. So now I want to go home and I want to open up a bottle when we get home or finish whatever we opened up before we left. So I was noticing that and it really felt like I needed to do this. And I would ask Brett on certain nights, I'm like, hey, it's just us watching Netflix. You want to split a bottle of champagne? Kind of almost like as a test. He never would ask. And when he would go like, no, not tonight. I remember thinking like, okay, that's fine. But also being annoyed, feeling like deprived. For so many years, drinking at home was very rare. And you know what? And I don't want you to compare your drinking to my drinking because it doesn't really even matter. Like you could be drinking far less than what I'm describing or way more. It doesn't matter. It really does not matter. And we get so caught up in these labels. And I know I watched so many videos to justify that what I was doing was fine, that I wasn't as bad as so-and-so. I watched TikTok videos, I watched YouTubes, and I would actively compare what I was doing to other people. And I would use that to justify, well, see, I don't have a problem. But it was becoming a problem mentally, emotionally. Even though I rarely had hangovers, I would wake up in the morning and just feel kind of bad about myself and I couldn't figure out why. And today I realize it's because I knew, maybe on a conscious level, that what I was doing did not align with the message, with my purpose in life, with my belief that I can help women to age powerfully, to have control over their health, and to look and feel their best. And I think subconsciously, I would wake up every morning after a night of drinking and think, you're lying to yourself and you're lying to other people. Like, on a subconscious, I had like an emotional hangover, if you will. It was like I couldn't put my finger on it and I didn't want to admit it, but that was one of the things. Like I would wake up in the morning and go like, when do I feel like good about myself right now? And I would quickly brush it away and go about my day. But in 2024, I started interviewing female doctors, women who are the leaders in care for menopause and perimenopausal women. People like Dr. Vonda Wright, people like Dr. Kelly Casperson, people like Dr. Mary Claire Haver. And, I love these women and I get to know them. I can actually call them my friends. And I remember when I was first getting to know these women who I completely respect for their knowledge and expertise, when I would find out that they don't drink, It was almost like, oh no, these are really smart women who are going to make the best possible decisions for themselves, and they're not drinking. I don't make a habit of interrupting my own video, but after the last episode I did on this exact topic, I got so many comments from women who talked about their symptoms and how alcohol is something that helps them get through the aging process. And ladies, I'm here to tell you, alcohol is not helping you. What you need to figure out is your hormones. And if you don't have a doctor in your area, let me tell you, there is a telehealth solution. It's called MIDI. This is a company that's been founded by women to solve the problem that most doctors don't have any clue what they're talking about when it comes to perimenopause and menopause. So if you're looking for a clinician who's actually trained in helping women get the hormone support that they need, please check out MIDI. I've used them myself. Several members of my staff have before I ever even considered. I was so excited about them, but I wanted to make sure, is this legit? Do they accept insurance? And the answer is yes. You will love MIDI. And I'm so happy that they are sponsors of The Chalene Show. You can check them out yourself by going to chalene.com/MIDI, MIDI. Again, it's chalene.com/MIDI. You deserve excellent hormone health and support. You deserve to be listened to. You deserve for people to believe your symptoms. And MIDI is our solution. Chalene.com/MIDI. I also remember thinking to myself, well, that's a bummer, because that's something we can't do together. I remember thinking anytime I met someone who I really liked and felt a connection with, and then I learned that they're a non-drinker, well, that's no fun. And it's not that they aren't fun. If I'm being honest, the reason why I had those thoughts, I realize that today, is because I felt like I couldn't drink then, or that I wouldn't be able to do the things I wanted to do. I had this fear of missing alcohol. Please comment below if you're watching this on YouTube, if you can relate to, I call it FOMA, fear of missing alcohol. I've done a whole series on it. And I did a previous video when I decided to take this journey. And I'm going to get to that in just a moment. So I'm interviewing all these women. It's starting to creep into my subconscious that maybe this doesn't align with my health objectives. So then we go to Europe in the summer 2024. And there's a night in Amsterdam after Brett and I have already done like almost a month and a half of travel all over Europe, where we're going out to dinner almost every single night, white linen tablecloths and a beautiful bottle of champagne. But there's this night, July 17th, where we were out in Amsterdam, and I woke up in the morning and I couldn't remember how many glasses of champagne I had. I could not remember. And there were parts of the evening that I could not fully remember. Now, if you would ask me then, if someone had said, hey, did you ever have blackouts? I'd be like, no, because I didn't even know what the definition of a blackout was. A blackout simply means there's parts that are fuzzy, parts that you really can't piece together. You didn't fall over and pass out. That's what I thought it meant. No, there's just parts of your brain, parts of your memory from that night that are just gone. And I woke up that next day and I said to Brett, after looking in the mirror and realizing how old I looked that morning, I looked tired. My eyes were puffy and heavy and hooded. And I just remember it took like so much longer to do my makeup that day. And I'm just going to be like all the way honest with you and tell you, like, for vanity reasons, I'm like, I need to take 7 days off. And I told Brett, I'm like, let's take 7 days off of drinking. And he was like, okay, like no big deal. And when I said that, it was really no big deal to me either until a couple of hours later. And that's when I was like, why is this suddenly all that I can think about? And then those first couple of days, I began obsessing like, oh my gosh, I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that we were like, I was really going to be denying myself this thing. And I kept making all these reasons like, this is so dumb. Why are you doing this? Don't do this. But by the same token, I knew I was going to be seeing some friends, and I wanted all that puffiness to leave my face. I wanted to get rid of all the inflammation in my body. I just did it for vanity reasons. But by day like 2 and 3, I realized this is hard. And that means something else is going on. In fact, the first couple of days were so hard that I did what I always do when I struggle. And that is I started doing research. So the first thing I did is I watched the Huberman podcast that everybody talks about, that I purposely, intentionally came out like 2 years ago. It has almost 7 million views. And I did everything in my power to avoid this video and any topic related to this video because I just didn't want to hear it. I loved my champagne and I had fear of missing out on alcohol. But I knew, okay, I need something that's going to really motivate me to get me through these 7 days. I'm not going to quit forever, but like I need something to help me get through these 7 days. So I started watching that podcast. I watched that whole thing, and that was pretty freaking shocking. That's what made me realize, like, okay, I have to do 7 days. And then I realized pretty quickly, like, I need some help, some support for these 7 days. So I started listening to books like Annie Grace. Her book is called This Naked Mind. And I started watching TikTok videos and I started watching YouTube videos. And I realized pretty quickly that I needed a plan in place if I was going to make it to 7 days. I now know that those first 7 to 10 days are actually the hardest. And by the time I hit day 10, I was like, this is already getting better. This is already getting easier. I want to keep going. But I didn't want to tell my husband yet because I didn't want it to affect our relationship. I was worried, like, this has almost become a hobby of ours. This is something we do together, even though I was very much aware that it was more me pushing it than him. I worried that it would affect our relationship. I didn't want to tell anyone, as a matter of fact, because I was afraid that if I told someone, they would A, think I had a problem, which I didn't want to admit, and B, that they might hold me to it, or C, that they might judge me. And so I just kept it to myself. And I started recording on my phone, almost like a diary of all my thoughts. And it was crazy. I felt like Sybil. My thoughts were all over the place. One second I would be like, I can do this forever. And then the next second I would be like, this is so dumb. Why are you doing this? You're in Europe on vacation and girl, you don't have a problem. Like, all the other excuses I would make. And I was going back and forth and back and forth. But yet every single morning when I woke up, I couldn't help but notice mentally my confidence, how I felt about myself was so good. Like I felt so proud of myself. And every day just kept getting easier. So I just kept recording these voice memos to myself, which, by the way, if you want to listen to that, I posted them all to my Patreon. I started doing that around week 2. So around the 14-day mark, which is when I made my first YouTube video. So you can watch my first YouTube video if you want to see when I made the declaration at the 14-day mark, which was so scary for me to do because I was like, if I say this out loud, people are going to hold me to it. And that's why I did it, because I noticed. And so I want to give you this tip. If you're toying with this idea and you're not making it public, right? And you're not telling anyone, but like maybe you've gone 7 days or maybe you've gone 5 days and you're like, this feels good, but I don't want to tell anyone in case I don't continue. But yet there's a side of you that's like, I'd like to continue. Talk about it. Make a TikTok, make a YouTube, make an Instagram. Talk about it. First of all, you will never in your life see more positive comments. In fact, if you're struggling right now, or if you're on day 3, or if you just want to make that public declaration under this episode of the Chalene Show, do it. I promise you this, you will get nothing but support and love and zero judgment. I have to say, on the internet, the only place I've never seen a space or a topic that garners more support and love and lack of judgment. No matter what it is, you will not be judged if you decide to embark upon this journey. Like even just the journey to drink less. People will support you. There's like no judgment when it comes to doing better. And isn't that interesting? Because alcohol is such a weird thing. By the way, as I'm recording this, I think I'm like day 55. Like I'm close to 2 months now. But I want to tell you, because I've made a list. I made a list of the things that I learned after 30 days. And the first one is this. All of my fears were just that. They were unfounded. I had such a huge fear that things wouldn't be as fun, that I wouldn't enjoy my husband as much, that I wouldn't want to go out to dinner, that I would never be able to go to a bar. Like all my fears I've discovered in less than 30 days were not true. Cover your ears, kids, if you're listening. But sex was great before, but it's a million times better. And I could have, you couldn't have paid me $1 million to believe that was going to be true. I can go to bars. I can sit at the bar. I can do so many things that I thought would be boring or would not be any fun, or what would be the point of doing it, or that I would feel triggered if I did those things. Not true for me anyways. And I know everyone's journey is different. That's the next thing that I learned in the first 30 days is that everyone's journey is different. So as much as we want to label ourselves or say like, okay, this means therefore I need to take a break, or this is how you're supposed to do it, or you have to do AA, or you have to cut back first. Like there's all these preconceived notions we have about what this looks like, but everyone's completely different. So a lot of things that people told me were going to be very, very hard weren't hard for me. And things that people told me that I would experience, I didn't experience. In fact, some of those things are positive. Like I heard from so many people, like, you're going to lose like 10 pounds your first month. Well, I didn't. I didn't lose a pound. And I almost hesitate to tell you that because most people do lose weight. I didn't. Um, but a lot of things that people said were going to be gnarly and really hard weren't hard for me. And that's because everyone's different. The reason why you might be drinking is completely different. I wasn't drinking to escape a bad marriage or a bad life or traumas that were unprocessed. I wasn't drinking to numb any kind of emotional pain. Alcohol's addictive. And it's very rare for people to start drinking and then slowly drink less. It's pretty rare. It can be done, but not without a plan. Like you truly do need a plan if that's your objective. And I'm not saying right now, I'm not announcing that I'm never going to drink again. But what I do know is I'll never be a drinker again because I know too much now about what it's done to my body. And I can't wait to get to the 6-month mark and see how much different I truly do feel. I want a thick, juicy, delicious prefrontal cortex. And knowing that my prefrontal cortex was thinning every time I was having a drink became my why. Like you need a why. That's another thing I learned in the first 30 days is you need something to focus on. And my first 7 days, it was just about vanity. I just wanted to like chisel the jaw. I wanted to like get rid of the puff and the inflammation and the bloating. But after that, as I started learning more and more about what alcohol does to our brain and our body, I was like, I'm doing this because I don't want my children to be dealing with what my husband has to deal with in terms of his father's Alzheimer's and how painful it is for him to have to, for us, for everyone who loves him, to have to watch this man go through what he's going through. It's such a horrible disease. And I'm not in any way suggesting that my father in law's Alzheimer's has anything to do with alcohol, but we do know you dramatically increase your risk of dementia by drinking, not to mention dramatically increasing your risk of cancer, in particular, breast cancer, in particular, women who are drinking moderate to heavy amounts. I learned in the first 30 days that 8 servings for women is considered on the borderline of being moderate to heavy drinking. 8 servings. Now, I know what you're thinking, like, I don't have 8 servings, but here's the deal. Like, if you're drinking a bottle and a half a week, like, so, if, you know, it's about the pour. So a 5-ounce pour is considered 1 serving. But most people, when they're at home, are giving themselves, research says, between 7 and 9 ounces. So what you think is 1 serving is actually almost 2 servings. So that number creeps up really fast. And when I started seeing the research of what just moderate, even light drinking does to your brain and your body, to your gut, I had no idea. I had no clue that alcohol was creating leaky gut. That's why so many people don't realize they have digestive problems. And then when I learned from these brilliant women how every single symptom of menopause and perimenopause is made worse by drinking alcohol, is made worse. And yet most of our doctors, we lie to them when they, you fill out that little form when you go to see a doctor for the first time, or they ask you, how many alcoholic drinks are you having per week? We're either lying to ourselves or lying to them, or we're miscalculating what an actual serving is. Even light and occasional drinking has an impact on every single cell in your body. It dries out your skin. It damages the liver. It affects hair growth. It disrupts your hormones. It disrupts your sleep. Like, I wonder how many women I can help by having them just consider taking a little break from alcohol to see how it goes for them and see if their symptoms subside. Like, that would be remarkable. And I almost feel I don't know, like, I don't wanna say guilty because that's maybe not the right emotion, but I do have some shame over knowingly ignoring the research that could make women's lives and that transition into perimenopause and menopause so much easier. Weight gain, there's no questioning the fact that as women begin to age, they tend to start drinking more because so do men. Like everyone tends to drink a little bit more because you get more of a tolerance, because you get more money, because there's more freedom, like all the reasons why. We also know that many women use alcohol to kind of dampen their menopausal symptoms. Like, so if you're dealing with anxiety and depression and aches and pains, like we often think that alcohol is making things better, but just in the moment, in the long run. And when I say long run, I mean like the next day. It really makes matters worse. Alcohol increases systemic inflammation. Your whole body is going to become inflamed when we drink. And yes, there are some alcohols that are far worse than others. And we know that the more toxins there are in your alcohol, the more susceptible you are to all cause mortality, which means you are more likely to die from one of these preventable diseases simply because you're occasionally enjoying a drink. Now, am I suggesting you should never have a glass of wine? No, but I do think you have to make a far more informed decision. And I think it's really, really hard for a lot of people to moderate. I know before I went on this journey, there are many times I thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to have like 2 glasses and that's it. But as soon as you finish that first glass, your inhibitions go down. And inhibitions serve us. They prevent us from doing stupid things. They prevent us from putting our foot in our mouth. They prevent us from having a second and a third glass. But when we reduce our inhibitions, that's when we make foolish decisions about what we're eating, what we're saying, what we're doing, how late we stay up, all of these things that impact our health. I also discovered that I had been using alcohol to tolerate people I just don't find that interesting and I really don't want to spend time with. And I know this now because I've gone out and had the best time. I'm still the wild child. I'm still the girl that wants to stand up on the table and dance. And I don't need alcohol to do that. But what I realized I was using alcohol for, and I do need alcohol for, is to tolerate being around really boring, uninteresting, or people I just don't like that much. Like it made it tolerable to have alcohol. And now I realize alcohol was actually robbing me of my time. It was making me blind to the fact that we have very limited time here on this earth, and we shouldn't be spending it with people who we don't really knowingly enjoy. We shouldn't spend time with those people. It was also robbing me of my motivation. I thought, well, I'm 55, and that's why I'm just not that into work. I'm not as inspired to make a change in the world as I once was because, I'm 55. But now I realize, no, that was the alcohol. That's why, because I didn't feel great about myself and I couldn't put my finger on it until now. I also realized that I really like the way this feels. I love it. I love feeling proud that I haven't had a drink. I know, right? Like tonight, I'm going out to dinner with my husband. We will be sitting at a beautiful restaurant with white linen tablecloths, and I won't feel the need to have a drink. And if I did, I could have one. And the thing right now that's preventing me from doing that is not the fear that I would go back to my old ways. It's that I really like being able to say that I've abstained, And like I said, I don't think I'll ever say I'm never going to drink again, but I'll never be a drinker again. Never, 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 never. I like it too much. I like being on this side of things. And it's so much easier than I thought it would be. In the last 30 days, I've also discovered that there's a lot of people that were like me. Like, you think you're a social drinker, you think it's not that big of a deal, you don't think you have a problem, you're not experiencing all of the downsides of drinking. And so you're like, there's really no reason to quit. And there's a lot of people like us who were like, so if I'm not experiencing all these negative side effects, why would I need to quit? But what we don't realize is what's happening you can't see Alzheimer's forming and you can't even feel your prefrontal cortex thinning. But I'll tell you what, in the almost 2 months since we stopped drinking, I can feel my ADHD symptoms lessening. I mean, they're not gone. I'm still forgetting things. I still have all my ways, but like the clarity, like my brain does not feel nearly as cloudy. And I'm so excited about what's going to happen in terms of my muscle development. Like learning that when you are consuming any amount of alcohol, your body has to solely focus on processing that toxin and those poisons out of your body. So it can't restore your muscle development. It can't synthesize protein the way that we can when we're free from alcohol. So, yeah, I'm going to continue on this journey and I love it. And I want you to know that there's no judgment, but I would love to hear below this episode, where are you in this sober curious journey? Are you sober curious? Are you curious to know how much you're going to miss alcohol if you gave it up? Do you need support? Do you need help? Do you want to just maybe drink less? Like maybe not stop drinking entirely and give it up, but like, are you curious about drinking less? Because less is also better than what you're doing now. And anyone who says it's not, because I read that in the comments, people are like, it's all poison. Yeah, that's true. But drinking less is better than drinking more. And so I am doing a challenge. I want to invite you to be a part of it. Depending on when you're watching this, you can go to phaseit.com/drink less. It's a 21-day challenge, and I walk you through the process. And not only will you drink less, but you're also going to get in more steps. So it's like a walking challenge and a drink less challenge. And I would love to invite you to be a part of it. If you just want to hear those audios, like my raw thoughts from the first 30 days. Cause I'll tell you what, like in my first 5 days, that's all I binged. That's all I wanted to hear is how did this feel for other people? And I listened to so many people's journeys. So if you want to hear mine, you can find it on Patreon. It's patreon.com/the Chalene Show. And I invite you to take a listen. And just know this, wherever you are and whatever you decide to comment below this episode, mark my words. Come back and check it a couple days later, check it a month later. You will see so much support, so much love, so much encouragement from people who've been there. And I needed to read those comments. Like I spent so much time reading people's comments because I wanted to know, like, I wanted to hear from people who were far worse off than me or were very much like me. I wanted to know, like, really, like every single person, I didn't find even one person who didn't say it was the best decision they ever made and that they feel phenomenal. I'm like, how could so many people have the exact same experience, like using the same words? There must be something to this. And today I can tell you there is.